I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 157. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Tardello, coming to you on Friday, May 17th. And hello, sickos. Long time no see. It's been a minute. Bit of a hiatus over here at Win Now or Get Bent. Not fully. Shout out to Zach Webb, our great producer, The Wizard. My guy, Reese Largent. They were putting out some good content in the spring, but I had to step away for a little bit. I had to focus on some things, particularly my brand new child into the world. So I appreciate everyone's patience during my self-imposed paternity leave. I've been itching to get back. I've needed to get back on this saddle for a long, long time. Feels like there's been a heaving, massive hole in my life that I've needed to fill with this podcast. I've missed talking to you sickos. I've missed talking about the Bobcats. I am very happy to be right here talking about Texas State on Win Now or Get Bent. Let's talk about these Bobcats. But before we get there, this episode is brought to you by TGC LLC, our good friends at the GalindoCollective.com. That's G-A-L-I-N-D-O, GalindoCollective.com, a team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at TGC_LLC, and at the Galindo Collective on Instagram and Facebook. Shout out to Rick Galindo at the Galindo Collective, a true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad himself. He's been with us since May last year. We officially started everything in July 1st with the Galindo Collective last year, but we came to our agreement in May. So it's been a year. So happy anniversary to Rick Galindo, our guy. He supported us all through last year. He's doing it again this year. Glad to have the Galindo Collective back with us in 2024. Thank you again to Rick Galindo. Hit them up at thegalindocollective.com. We are also brought to you by Chillzy.com, CHILLZEY.com. Custom tumblers, custom koozies. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. You can see me holding up this nice Win Now or Get Bent tumbler. You can see the Mad Cat right there displayed on the front. We've even got some nice koozies right here. A lot of you remember, hold on, let me get a better, there you go. There's the koozie. A lot of you remember these koozies from last season. We were handing them out at tailgates and whatnot. They were brought to you by Chillzy, Chillzy.com, CHILZEY.com. Custom tumblers, custom koozies, whatever logo you want to put on these. Put a Win Now or Get Bent logo on there. Put a work logo on there. Don't put another team. Maybe like if you have a family gathering, a family reunion, you guys are old school and you have a family insignia or something, slap that bad boy on here. Order these. If you order 6 or more of these tumblers and you punch in Bobcats at checkout, the price gets reduced to $15 a piece on these right here. So check them out, Chillzy.com. My guy, Dennis Redding over there, true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad. He helped us get through last season, helping us hand out some nice koozies to everybody. We're going to have some a great giveaway like that again with Chillzy.com coming up this season. But check them out, Chillzy.com. All right. Thank you to the Galindo Collective and to Chillzy. It's been a minute since we've done a pod, so it's good to put those brands back out there. If you want to get your brand out there, have other sickos hearing about what you're doing for work, hit us up, wnogbkef@gmail.com. We are, now that we're back. We're back, baby. We're bringing the content all summer long and into the season. Now we're looking for sponsors and other ways to keep us afloat because our team has grown. As I've mentioned, we'll see a lot more of that this summer. But let's get to these Bobcats. Lots to talk about, lots to catch up on over the last few months. Again, I appreciate everybody's patience. You know, there's a lot of things I needed to handle. This is my passion project, so it's really hard to stay away from it. There was just a lot of factors in my life I needed to focus on with a new job, a new child. There's a lot of outside factors. But I always knew I'd come back to it. I saw some of you on Twitter say Kef broke up with Texas State. I missed the days when Kef's always talking about the Bobcats. I may not have been talking as much, but I promise I've been thinking as much, and I've been keeping up with everything, watching along, not just with football. There's a lot of good stuff going on over the last few months. Football is the big bad daddy. That's the one we're always going to talk about. It's one we're always on our mind. But there's been some good stuff with other sports. In fact, let's get to that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other sports. Let's talk specifically softball. Your 2024 Sun Belt champions. Shout out to softball. Shout out to Ricky Woodard. Shout out to Mullins, telling him you're out of here. Get back to the dugout after a strikeout. That's one of the best signatures I've ever seen here at Texas State. Is Mullins striking somebody out, looks at him, go back to the bench. I love it. Shout out to Mully. Shout out to these Bobcats. Ricky Woodard got to be up there as one of the greatest coaches at Texas State ever. I mean, if you start at the tippy top, it's Karen Chisholm. Obviously I don't even think that's really a huge debate. But she's got to be up there, especially when you think about it, intersports and everything. In fact, that's probably some good summertime content right there, thinking about the greatest Texas State coaches of all time. Where's GJ Kinney stack up there? Not quite. I don't know. Not maybe not top 10 yet, but there's still time. It's early for him. It's a nice season last year, that's for sure. Ricky Woodard, shout out to Ricky Woodard. Shout out to these Texas State Bobcats. They're playing in the College Station Regional. I'm recording this on Friday afternoon. They are about to play, so make sure you go check that one out. Playing against Penn State. A lot of people thought that the regional should have been here in San Marcos. Team warranted that. They were good enough, and I'm right there with you. I heard some of the reasons why is the seating capacity. They needed it to be more, so they wanted it to be a bigger school, which part of me, I guess, if I'm being unbiased, I can understand that you want more seats for a regional, but the Bobcat in me just can't accept that one. Should be here. It's a really nice softball complex they have here. Deserves to be displayed. Real quick, women's track and field won the Outdoor Sunbelt Championship as well. Shout out to them. Men finished second. Nice finish there. Golf, women's golf coach Par Nilsson was Sunbelt Coach of the Year. That just happened not too long ago. Women's golf coach. What a great name for a golf coach. Par Nilsson. And then baseball, not as exciting, very inconsistent. Really high highs this year, beating Texas. Then they've just had some really low lows. I mean, I feel like we even experienced that again this week. It feels like it's every week. It's like, oh man, look at what they did. And then, oh man, look at what they did. It was like Sunday, they beat Troy, number 21 ranked Troy. Didn't beat the series, but they got that Sunday win. And that felt really good. And even then I didn't let it fool me. And I was right to not let it fool me, because then on Tuesday, they ended up losing to McNeese State, which I know our great producer, Zachary Webb, the Wizard, I know he loved that one. Maybe he didn't love it. It's probably torn. We'll say he was torn. But very inconsistent year for baseball. But let's get to football. Big Bad Daddy, as I was saying, it's what we all want to talk about. I want to do a pod around spring ball, but it's been hard because, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. You can see I'm in my office. I've got the sound cushions on the wall to make it nice and quiet, but even so, right next door is a nursery with a crying newborn. So it's been hard to get in there, hard to get in here and do a pod. Things are starting to simmer a little more around here. So the studio is a little calmer. But I really wanted to do one right after the spring game. Just logistically couldn't work it out. So we'll talk a little bit about this, some things I saw there, and go through the roster and talk about some of these new coaches with football. Spring game, right off the bat, what I wanted to see was Jordan McLeod. It was the number one thing I wanted to see. There's a lot I wanted to look at, but that was the biggest unknown that I hadn't seen on this team. Wanted to get a good look at Jordan McLeod, not on TV. Obviously saw him play at JMU. Know what he's about, know what kind of quarterback he is, and maybe he just seemed a little smaller than I anticipated. And maybe a little bit of that is the effect of TJ Finley being 6'7". from last season. Just seeing that all year, just the biggest guy on the field is at quarterback. And then McLeod, he's 6 foot, but he's just a little bit smaller of a guy. I mean, even PJ Hatter was bigger than him. Big arm though. Didn't really get to see him air it out as much as I'd want. Usually don't in spring games for some reason. They don't really go down the field a lot, but any of those throws, those intermediary throws, 10, 15, 20 yards, I really thought they were on point. They were a laser. Finley's arm was a little stronger. I feel like last year he's got that just a booming cannon off his fingertips, but McLeod is pretty close right there as far as the zip on the ball and everything. Just didn't get to see a ton of the deep ball. Similar to interesting deal with the quarterback position. Obviously with McLeod, and then behind him there's PJ Hatter, there's Brad Jackson. We saw GJ Kinney do what he did last season, last spring, where they picked up Malik Hornsby in January 2023, went through spring practice. He was their number one guy. Spring practice ended. They went out and they got TJ Finley. By the time the Baylor game rolled around, he was the starter. And then he started every game that year, TJ Finley. So we saw them do a quarterback change after spring, and saw the same thing again this year. Jordan McLeod, he comes in, he's the number one guy out through the spring. Spring practice ends, and then it turns out they went and got RJ Martinez, Baylor quarterback, guy from Austin, transfer, local player, really good player. But it's still going to be it's a different situation than Finley last year. When Finley came in, it felt like, oh man, this is a real competition. They're bringing in Finley in to really overtake that number one spot. This time, it's definitely in McLeod's hands. They're bringing in Martinez because to really just shore up the quarterback room. Because behind McLeod, you have two freshmen. They're talented freshmen. I really like both of them, PJ Hatter and Brad Jackson. PJ Hatter being a redshirt, Brad Jackson being a true freshman. I like both of them, but they still just neither one has a ton of experience. We saw PJ Hatter get in during garbage time against Jackson State. That nice 60-yard touchdown that was called back would have put him over that 77 points, would have been the all-time record for points in a game for Texas State, but I digress. It should have counted. But so PJ Hatter, it definitely has the athletic ability, got in there in a few snaps, still hasn't thrown a pass in a game. Brad Jackson's brand new right out of high school. So just not a ton of experience. And as we know, football is a violent sport. Jordan McLeod goes down, gets hurt. You gotta have insurance behind him. Even if it's just he rolled an ankle or got hit in the ribs real good, just needs to sit out for a quarter. You want to have somebody with some experience to go out there that you can be confident in. And I feel like they got that with RJ Martinez, and RJ Martinez has 2 years left. So he could potentially compete even more so for the job next year. And RJ Martinez, I know from watching footage, from talking to coaches that have coached with him and trained him up even in the offseason and stuff, he's got a cannon of an arm. He's got a strong arm. When I said I didn't get to see with McLeod, didn't necessarily see it a ton at JMU. That wasn't their game. And then I didn't see it a ton at the spring game. But I know RJ Martinez has got a cannon. He's got a big booming arm. He's a bigger quarterback and everything. So I thought that was a really nice late addition, a nice savvy move for GJ Kinney to work the transfer portal again. We know he loves to do that. It shot him in the foot a little bit in January with the whole JDL situation and TJ Finley leaving for Western Kentucky. But he's more than made up for it by going and getting the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year in Jordan McLeod, and then getting a really good quarterback in RJ Martinez as well. It's four really good quarterbacks they have. And just a reminder on McLeod, I just saw it right here in my notes. I was prepping for this episode and I saw I had prepped from the last episode, just a little 3 sentence thing on Jordan McLeod, just so we all remember what he's about. McLeod spent one season in Harrisonburg, JMU, last year, throwing for 3,657 yards, 35 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, while rushing for another 276 yards and 8 scores. On top of earning Sun Belt Player of the Year in 2023, he was named first team All Sun Belt and a Davey O'Brien Award semifinalist. So that's a really good player that the Bobcats have behind center. Excited to see what it looks like this fall. I'm looking at that schedule and getting excited about everything. But let's go through this roster. I put a projected roster up on collegefootballnetwork.com. Shout out to my employer. Go check them out. I saw one of you on Twitter put, make sure you guys click on all these articles that Kev puts out. And thank you. Yes, please click away. Have fun clicking. But not all of them are Texas State that I get to write about, but a good chunk of them, which has been nice. Part of what I got to do is I projected a 2024 Texas State depth chart. If you want to go check it out, you can check out my Twitter page. It's pinned on the page there, but we're going to talk all about it here. It's already changed a little bit. I mean, since I put it out a couple weeks ago, it was last week. Put it out last week. It's already changed a little bit. Inevitable transfer portal era. So we have some updating to do with it. But if you've been listening to this pod the last few years, you know I love doing these projected depth charts. I love to guess what I have going on. Because it was harder than years past to figure out the depth chart after the spring game. Usually I feel like I have a pretty good eye for what's happening there. But this year they weren't wearing numbers. And GJ Kinney said after the spring game that with so many guys transferring in and out, you don't know who's going to be here. Guys, they have to earn numbers. They're going to earn it by fall camp. So no numbers during spring. It's really hard to scout some guys. Obviously there's guys I recognize from years past and everything, but some of these new guys, it was tough. But I still feel like I have a pretty good idea of what I was looking at out there. It'll be interesting to see who gets what numbers. And I can't help but wonder, is a little bit of strategy not revealing their numbers. So if you're scouting the Bobcats at their spring game, you don't know what player's doing what. I'm around this team quite a bit, and I was lost out there. Who scored that touchdown? Jalen Jenkins? Oh, the Washington State running back. We'll talk about him. But let's go through this roster, predicting a depth chart. I'll try to do it really quick. I won't keep you too long. Quarterback though, Jordan McLeod, number 1, RJ Martinez, number 2, PJ Hatter, number 3. I have him 3 because of his experience last year, been in the system for a year already. And then Brad Jackson, I anticipate him getting a red shirt looking at this quarterback room. Really talented true freshman though, Brad Jackson coming out of San Antonio. Switching to running back. What a luxury having Ish Mahdi coming back. Led the nation in all-purpose yards last year. He's back for the Bobcats. Another player who's back for the Bobcats, Lincoln Perry. I have him listed at number 2 right here. He was the leading rusher for the Bobcats in 2022. Tore his ACL before last season, didn't get to play. Still very much around the team, very much involved with the team. I anticipate him getting into this rotation. It's not going to supplant Mahdi as the starter, but he'll still get his, I'm sure. Same with the guy behind him who I already kind of teased earlier, Jalen Jenkins, Washington State. I saw a lot of him at the spring game. He stood out to me. Real shifty back out of the backfield team that can catch some passes, do some dangerous stuff. Hit a nice 60-yard touchdown that we got to see. Those 3, obviously Mahdi's going to start, but between Perry and Jenkins, they could switch between 2 and 3, but I think those are your top 3. And we've heard GJ Kinney talk about running backs and using the running game. And how surprisingly good they are at running. I mean, last year, what were they, 26th in the nation in rush offense, averaging over 200 yards? I think that might have led the Sun Belt. Not as close to it. But they run the ball really well. And they like to cycle through backs, and they were using 3 primarily last year. But GJ Kinney's talked about he's coming from the Gus Malzahn tree. I guess he was more a player for Malzahn. No, he was coach too. He's coach too. But he's coming from the Malzahn tree, and he's mentioned that before, where Gus Malzahn likes to use 5 to 7 running backs, and that's something that he also subscribes to. You have to really see him use 7 running backs. That's a lot in one game. He's gotten close to 5, I guess, if you include a quarterback, but they will use 3. I can say that. So Mahdi, Perry, Jenkins, you'll see them a lot. And then Torrance Burgess and Deion Hankins, 2 transfers from UTEP, following Barrick Neely over from UTEP to be in his running back room. So that's pretty nice there. Good running back room. Those 5 guys. Shout out to Trent Lacey as well. He's still in that room. Big guy. That might be the new goal line back. Who knows? Jamal Jeter, he was doing that goal line deal last year. Let's go to wide receiver. We're going to talk about wide receiver, and then we'll go to slot receiver. But we're out wide right now. I have the 2 starting wide receivers as Joey Hobart and Jaden Williams, Boston College transfer. Behind them, I have Bo Sparks and Drew Donley. Bo Sparks is a transfer from Utah Tech. Drew Donnelly, remember him from last year. Might be the fastest guy on the team now that Malik Hornsby's gone, but debated. Then I also have Kylan Evans, true freshman. He's a real talented true freshman, ready to go. Big kid. And then I have a player that I think might even be able to work his way further up this list, and that is Langston Anderson, Oklahoma State transfer. He got here really, really late last year, right before the season started. Him and Victor Obi, the Baylor defenseman, if you remember him, just played one season, then he left. So he got here really late. Very talented, very highly recruited high school player. So he's a senior now. See if he can get in that rotation, especially when it's not as deep as it was last year, especially out wide. And then in the slot, two slot receivers, I have Cole Wilson, of course, and then Chris Don Jr. is a true freshman last year, started to come on late. I've heard a lot about him from the coaches this spring. A lot of praise heaped on Chris Don Jr. So if we're looking at a four receiver set, two guys out wide, two in the slot, I have Joey Hobart, Jaden Williams out wide, Cole Wilson, Chris Don on the inside at slot. Behind them, behind Cole Wilson, I have Cannon Webb. He's San Marcos local product from San Marcos High School. Has been on the team for a few years, and then Brandon Treggs as well. Not very deep at the slot position, maybe unless they're thinking about moving some guys inside that I'm not considering. I remember when Julian Ortega Jones was moved to the slot. That one surprised me because he's a tall guy, he's a big guy. Usually you see the small little shifty receivers. And even Cole Wilson, I have him here as a slot, seeing him play out wide as well. So we'll see. We'll see what they're thinking. Maybe they want some big guys in the slot. So that very much subject to change at the receiver position. I think it's safe to say Joey Hobart and Cole Wilson will be starters. I can say that with the utmost confidence. Tight end, got Connor Fox. Connor Fox, remember him, Kansas State transfer. He got hurt last year, right after the Baylor game. Made a great catch at the goal line in the Baylor game. In the first half, didn't return for the second half, missed a bunch of games. He'll be back. Anticipate him being a starter. Very much involved with the team anytime they have an event. Like there's Connor Fox standing next to GJ Kinney or Kelly Dampus or somebody to do an event. So he's a very much involved player. At number two behind him, I have Blake Smith. He's the Oklahoma transfer. He's got 2 years left. He's still a junior. So that'll be interesting to see. Big body. Seems like more of a blocker, but hey, I said that about Connor Fox last year, and the Connor Fox clan, not his family. I said clan sounds family. It's just people who fans of his from San Antonio, that's where he's from. We're like, hey, now go look at his high school tape. Go run that tape back, dude. The guy he's a pass catcher. They had him blocking at Kansas State, but so maybe I'm unfairly saying Blake Smith is a blocker as well. But then Titus Lyons behind Blake Smith. When Connor Fox went down, Titus Lyons got in there and played really well for them. Still has 2 years left. I love to see that from Titus Lyons. Big Titus Lyons fan. I think they are very strong in that tight end room. I think even if I have him third here, he's still gonna get in the rotation and get in the mix there. Well, if you've been listening to this pod for a while, you know I love tight ends. I feel like they have been underutilized here at Texas State through multiple coaching regimes. I look at this tight end room and it's as good as I've seen in a bit. So I hope to see more. Show the tight end some love. You ask a lot of people, it's the most athletic person on the field, the tight end. They can block, they can catch. They're usually tall, they're usually fast, they're usually big. Let's go to the offensive line. Speaking of big guys, left tackle, Nash Jones. That's going to be the left tackle. We remember him. He got hurt last year, UTSA game, broke his ankle. I think that's what it was. Broke his ankle. Missed most of the season. Came back towards the end. Even played the bowl game, which was much needed. Behind him, I have Trenton Scott. He played in relief of Nash Jones last year at left tackle. I like Trenton Scott a lot. When he was his senior year, I was even at his signing day coming out of Luling High School. Not a lot of times the guys are within driving distance, so I made sure to just go ahead and go and take pictures and be there. So it was nice to see him thrive at left tackle. That's why I have him at number 2 here. He's somebody that I could see the coaches looking at his experience and his body type and everything, and maybe trying to utilize him somewhere else on the line if you can't play him behind Nash Jones. But he's a really good player, despite being number 2. At left guard, we have Dorian Strawn. He had a great year last year. One of many Incarnate Word transfers. He's going to be back at that left guard spot. I think he may have even played some right guard last year, but I know he'll be interior line. Behind him, I have Alex Harkey's Colorado transfer. I clocked him as a tackle when he first got in here to Texas State, but they had him playing guard last year, so I've penciled him in as backup guard. At center, we know that Caleb Johnson left, big show, big center for the Bobcats. He graduated. Really surprised he didn't get any undrafted free agent love. That was actually very, very surprising to me. I think that if USFL or somebody's going to get a gift with him, I think he's a terrific player. I had him as the best offensive lineman that they had, not named Nash Jones. I think that's their best one. But when he was hurt, that was their guy. But I have Chase Todd manning that center spot now. Chase Todd was a backup last year. He transferred in from Houston. I know he's a player who's gotten a lot of praise. He's somebody who could have played last year if they weren't so deep. They had Bray Walker, guard Dorian Strawn, Caleb Johnson. It's pretty deep, so it's hard for him to crack that rotation all the time. But even still, he'd get in there at guard. He has some center experience, though, and they need a center. The only other guy who played center, Danny Valenzuela, he's gone. Who played center in college, I should say. There's other guys who are previous centers. Danny Valenzuela, he's gone, transferred out. So I imagine Chase Todd will be that center for the Bobcats. But behind him, I have Justin DeLeon, redshirt freshman. He's a true freshman last year. A sneaky good true freshman last year for the Bobcats. He didn't play, but he was a former Baylor commit. Really good player at center. And so I imagine once he develops and comes along, he's going to be a good player for them. But for now, I think Chase Todd, with his experience, he's a senior. Safe bet to put Todd in there. I'm sure they've been itching to put him somewhere in that interior OL. And now you look at that center spot open, seems like a natural fit. Right guard, we have a new guy, Talik Lockett. Talik Lockett Jr. just transferred in from ULM, second team All Sun Belt last year. Even saw him on a list of top 10 offensive linemen that are eligible for the draft this year. I was pretty surprised. It's like, man, they snuck a really good transfer in there with Talik Lockett. He's been a guard at ULM, was right guard, so I penciled him at right guard here. He could even do left guard. Maybe him and Strawn will switch, but I have him at right guard for now. Behind Talik, I have a Mika Abibo. He is another Incarnate Word transfer. The Abibo twins, his brother is the starting right tackle. We'll get there. But at right guard, I have Emeka Abibo. That's where they were playing him at guard last year. So I imagine he'll stick in the interior offensive line. He's another guy who I clocked as a tackle, similar to Alex Harkey, and they played him at guard last year. And I think I may be falling victim to the old school view of interior offensive linemen are shorter, not smaller really, but shorter, more compact, because they need to that's a better fit for the inside of the offensive line. Seems like that's changed. I mean, even if you look at the Bobcats last year, Bray Walker, 6'7", playing guard. Caleb Johnson, 6'6", playing center. I don't know if that was an old school view because of that low center of gravity, or if it was really that there was a viewpoint that it was easier for the quarterbacks to see across the line if they weren't as tall over the middle. But it seems like that has changed a lot. I mean, you look at every level, those interior linemen are getting taller and taller. It's not just the pure size in the waistline anymore. It's all around length. You need those. I feel like with how fast-paced offenses are and everything, you need guys who are a little bit more athletic, even on the interior line. Let's go to right tackle. The other Abibo brother, Jameto Abibo, starting at right tackle. Really good year at right tackle. They're twins, Emeka and Jameto, but Jameto is a senior and Emeka is a redshirt junior. So Emeka's got another year. Even though Jameto, I'm certain he's going to be the starting right tackle, I'm really impressed with the guy behind him, Isaiah Walker, a junior college transfer. He would be a starter in most years, but I think that Jameto is going to be in there. And a Walker, similar to Trenton Scott, he's somebody that I feel like they could look at and go, that's a good player. Maybe we can utilize him somewhere else on the line. But for now, I have him right there at tackle. Let's go to the defensive end. Got my two defensive ends as Ben Bell. We all know that guy. And Stephen Parker, new guy, Incarnate Word, familiarity with the staff. He's a really good player. I'm certain he's going to be a starter. Makes up for Chance Main and Sam Latham and Jordan Revels leaving. It's nice to get someone like Stephen Parker in there. But I imagine it's going to be Ben Bell and Stephen Parker. Behind them, Jalazen Landry. He started to come along, true freshman last year, wearing number 6. He was playing in the bowl game and everything. I think he'll be more and more in the rotation after taking a red shirt last year. And then Devin Wright, the Boise State transfer, his first year with the Bobcats was last year. Terrific year. Had like a two-sack game. And then Khalil Alexander there as well, another guy who was terrific in spurts, like Devin Wright. And then we have Bryce Bass, new transfer coming in from Bryce Bass, Gardner Webb. That's where Bryce Bass is out of. Gardner Webb over there. But even looking at that defensive tackle spot, I mean, we talk about the front seven from last year a lot, how strong they looked. And they're getting a lot of their DTs back because I even mentioned it a little earlier where even that this projected depth chart that I put out, it's already needs updating, especially at that defensive tackle spot when we're talking about Myron Warren. So Myron Warren, I have him as my number 2 defensive tackle. He entered the transfer portal, and they're pretty deep there. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on with Myron Warren transferring out. Because even if you go back to the O line, when I was talking about Chase Todd, there were 2 interior O linemen last season that could have gotten into the rotation more if they weren't just so good there already with Chase Todd and Marcus Alexander. And then going into spring, when you see Bray Walker and you see Caleb Johnson gone, opens up a couple spots, but then they go get Tillich Lockett. That leaves 1 interior spot, specifically at center. And I think that's where Chase Todd kind of overtook Marcus Alexander. And so you see Marcus Alexander, he hit the portal as well. But I feel like the same deal happened with Myron Warren. It was just they have a lot of defensive tackles because he's a really good player. He's going to be able to play somewhere else, but he just may not have started here. And he's got 1 year left, former Texas transfer. So you got to do what you got to do. But at defensive tackles for the 2 starters that I have, 4-2-5 defense, if that's what they're still doing, it still looks like that's what it is from spring ball. You know, Jonathan Patke, former defense coordinator, he left for Duke. They've moved up Dexter McCoyle as co-DC, brought in Bradley Dale Pavito as co-DC as well. So I'm pretty sure they're still going to do that 4-2-5. So in this 4-2-5, they would have 2 defensive tackles, Tavian Coleman, Terry Webb. So I penciled in as the starters. I had Myron Warren as a backup. We're going to put Alex Merritt in there now, Eastern Michigan transfer. I think he moves up in there. And then Cameron Washington as well, getting into the mix. We saw Cam Washington play quite a bit. Christian Rory as well. I have Christian Rory directly behind Terry Webb. And then behind him, I have Dominic Ratcliffe. All 6 of those guys I named, Tavian Coleman, Alex Merritt, Cameron Washington, Terry Webb, Christian Rory, and Dominic Ratcliffe, they could all be starters. I'm impressed with all of them. I really want to talk about Dominic Ratcliffe because he moved from defensive end to the interior D line, which are 2 completely different worlds. You can even tell just from the body types when you look at the difference between a tackle and an end. But there are these rare breeds that can play both. And Dominic Ratcliffe is that, and they moved him to the interior. And I was surprised when they did it before last season. So as guy transferred over from Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. It seemed like he was a player that a lean player. I was like, he's a really lean guy, and they're going to move him to the inside. But he put on some weight, some good weight, some muscle, and he did really well on the interior. So it'll be interesting to see him. A slender guy can fit through those gaps between that tackle and the center, or guard in the center, guard and tackle, and slip right in between those blocks. So that it'll be a fun lineup. I like the interior defensive line of this Texas State defense. In my opinion, their strongest unit, I feel, that interior D line. Because even there's another guy I didn't mention, Nathan Herrera. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong. I haven't mentioned him a whole lot. He was somebody we heard his name at the spring game press conference. We heard that name. So Nathan Herrera as well. Going to linebacker, they had Brian Holloway and Dan Foster last year, 2 really good linebackers. Brian Holloway, we saw what he did in the bowl game and everything, just terrific stuff. I mean, even on that pick 6 that Holloway had, there was a big block, took out 2 guys, was Dan Foster. Holloway graduated, Foster transferred, he's going to Louisville. They were able to recoup some of those losses in the transfer portal. They went and got Max Harris at a ULM, really good player. I'm pretty sure he led the Warhawks in tackles last year. And then more recently, they got Traylon Payne to come over from Houston, really good inside linebacker. Those are the 2 guys I've penciled in that 4-2-5 defense. Those are the 2 in the middle, Max Harris and Traylon Payne. Although James Neal, UTEP transfer, he could get in there as well. Kenny Haynes has been on this team for a long time. He was a running back in high school, converted to linebacker. I've been kind of waiting to see Kenny Haynes get in there and take over. He feel like he's been in the rotation for years. He hasn't taken over as a starter. I don't think he will this year as a senior, but I still really appreciate his athletic ability. CJ Williams as well. He's a senior this year. He was a JUCO transfer from last year. He got into the rotation. And then Derek Morning Jr., another JUCO guy who got in the rotation also. But I think it's going to be a lot of Max Harris and Traylon Payne, pepper in some James Neal, CJ Williams in there quite a bit. Not their strongest unit, but they did recoup some they were able to recover from those losses of Holloway and Foster somewhat. You know, it's pretty hard to replace two players of that caliber, but we'll see this season. Switching over to corner, deeper than I expected at corner. I say deep, but some of these guys I haven't seen. So I've seen the two starters in Josh Eaton and Chris Mills. We've seen them a lot. Eaton really emerged as one of the vocal guys on this defense last year. Chris Mills just has a plethora of experience. So I'm pretty confident in those two guys. Got Justin Harris and Trez Moore, two transfers that are coming in. Those who I have as the two backups on my depth chart. I just haven't seen them play, but it seems like from looking at their box scores and their experience that they're pretty good players themselves. And then Dante Thompson and Amarian Atwood. Amarian Atwood was a true freshman last year, and I kind of clocked him as a safety when he first came in, but they've been moving him to corner. Speaking of safety, I like the starters a lot. Caleb Culp, Torrey Spears. We know those two names. We saw Caleb Culp last year. Caleb Culp, he wasn't a starter until Torrey Spears was out for the season, and then he became a starter and was terrific. So now to see both of them in the lineup together, I think that'll be pretty fun. Two very different safeties. Torrey Spears, 6'4", big tall guy. Caleb Culp, not short, he's like 6 foot, 5'10", 5'11", somewhere around there. But he's more a compact guy. I mean, he squats 500 pounds he weighs 200 pounds. I don't know how that works, but he's like an ant. As far as strength, not size. Again, don't want to offend Caleb Culp over here. But behind Culp, I have Darius Jackson. We didn't get to see him last year either. Mizzou transfer. He got hurt. So he didn't get out there last year. And then Bobby Crosby as well. We've seen Bobby Crosby get out there. He's gotten some praise from Dexter McCoyle, safeties coach, co-defense coordinator now. Bobby Crosby got the dreads. You'll see him out there. Four good players, but just not a ton of depth at that safety spot. I wish I would have had a third to list at those two spots, but I don't know what they're thinking about the defensive backfield, who they're going to play at safety, who they're going to play at star, that nickel position they have, the fifth of that 4-2-5. Speaking of that star position, I have AJ Edwards, Alonzo Edwards Jr. as my starter at star, but then Caleb Coleman, the West Virginia transfer, saw what he could do last year, playing with a club last year for a little bit, did some good things. I like both of them a lot at that star position, and I like the third guy, Michael Boudin II, local guy from New Braunfels. Like to see him get in there. He gets a lot of praise, but they're pretty strong at that star position. We'll round out with special teams real fast. Punter, David Nunez Jr., Sia Seamus O'Kelly. Man, felt like he was punting here forever. We got a new guy now. Kicker, Mason Shipley, Mr. Perfect from last year on field goal attempts. Did miss a PAT, though, but we'll forgive it. Long snapper, John Orlean. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Sorry about that, John. Kick returner, Ish Mahdi. Punt returner, Cole Wilson. We'll see. That could be subject to change. And even kick returner, who knows? Maybe, I don't think so. He's too good at kick return. Remember that 100? It's a 100-yard return. It's 102 in my book. He caught that one in the end zone. Even though he's really valuable on offense, he's just as valuable on special teams. Even if they want to preserve his health, I imagine he'd still return some kicks. We'll see with some of these punt returners, because there's some other guys. Bo Sparks is a new guy. I could see return some punts, maybe some younger defensive backs. We'll see. Yeah, and we were promised Josh Eaton was gonna do the Travis Hunter thing, play some receiver. Can he return kicks? We'll see. We'll see with that kick returner. And then on this assignment, I was assigned to list a holder as well. I put David Nunez, but I really don't know. if he's going to be the holder. I think I called him David Nunez Jr. when I mentioned him as punter. He is a junior, but his name is David Nunez, not a junior, not David Nunez Jr. It's a junior in school. You with me? Still there? All right. Yeah, so that's the roster there. I'm more and more confident with this roster when I look at the depth, when I go through it and I ride out a two deep. It's kind of why I like to do the two deep and predict it. It's going to be way wrong. It's going to be mine might even look different in a month from now, from what I've after talking with people and figuring out what's happening. But I like to just get a feel for where I think they are strong and where I think they are lacking a little bit. If I think they're lacking anywhere, if I go on offense, I'd say wide receiver, just some more depth there. I really like the starters. I really like the second guys, but they seem to go through a lot of receivers with this offense, very fast-paced offense. So it seems they're going to need some more receivers, but who knows? Maybe they have some guys that are going to emerge that aren't even on my radar yet. It's a lot of new guys. But then on defense, safety, you talked a lot about that, just the depth behind Spears and Culp, and Darius and Bobby Crosby, just behind them. Maybe some linebacker depth as well. I like those two new starters they got, and I mentioned Kenny Haynes, C.J. Williams. I like those backups in the rotation. But they just don't feel very deep at that position. It was a position that they felt really deep at last year, with Holloway and Foster and Emmanuel and Williams, and they had now of those four is just Williams back. So those are my positions I was concerned about. I went into the spring game in my head. I was like, it seems like offensive line might need some work. I thought I was going to go in there really looking at the O line and thinking, okay, how are they going to make up for Caleb Johnson and Bray Walker leave in? Those are, it's pretty literally and figuratively big losses. But I offensive line looks really strong, even when I'm writing out the depth chart and everything. I mean, maybe a tad bit more depth on the interior. But we were talking about some of those tackles, Trent Scott, that might they might shoot on the inside, give them a shot in there. I just feel like they have a lot to play with, a lot more to play with on the offensive line than I thought going into the spring game. That's for sure. But defense, I love the defensive line, specifically defensive tackle. I feel like that's their strongest. Defensive end, they're pretty strong too. They lost some guys, so they're not as strong as they are at DT, but they've got a pretty ferocious defensive line, and I think they're going to do some damage this season. We'll see with some of these with the DBs as far as depth, even safety and corner depth. They have the depth at corner, just a lot of unknowns with some of these guys. So I'm waiting to see kind of on the back end of the defense, but the very front of the defense, feeling pretty good about. Feeling good about quarterback, running back, tight end. I feel really good about those positions. Almost feel really good about receiver. Like I was saying, just want to see it from some of these other guys that we quite haven't seen yet. One more thing, we'll talk. I want to talk about the coaches. Just two of them really, just because that I haven't gotten a chance to discuss these two hires, these additions to this coaching staff. That's Chad Morris as receiver and pass game coordinator, and Bradley Dale Pavito as linebackers coach and co-defense coordinator with Dexter McCoyle. When they first happened, I was pretty busy in my life. There's a lot going on, so I'd see those hires like, oh, okay, that's pretty great. Chad Morris was like, wow, that's really interesting, and I didn't really circle back to it until recently when I really got to look at it and think about what these guys mean to this coaching staff and really looking at this coaching staff as a whole and how it's an exciting staff. I like this staff a lot. So with Chad Morris, Chad Morris and with Morris and Pavito, they are two guys who have a ton of experience. Morris has got a ton of high school coaching experience and then college experience. The high school went better than the college, at least when he was the head coach at Arkansas. I know that's what are on a lot of people's mind. If you get rid of that 2019 Arkansas season, 2018 and 2019, I think he was there 2 years. If you get rid of those and you look at the rest of his career, he's had a pretty fantastic career. And then same with Bradley Dale Pavito, just a wealth of experience, both of them over 30 years in coaching. So that's over 60 years of experience on the staff. That's a pretty young staff. GJ Kinney's 35. Mac Leftwich is not 30. I think he's 29 right now. I mean, you go Dexter McCoyle. He's in his third season as a coach, and he's going into it as the co-DC. Like it's quite a promotion for a guy who just 2 years ago was getting his first coaching job at Incarnate Word. Now he's the co-DC at Texas State. And now he is young in his coaching career, but his experience on the field outweighs all of that. I mean, the guy 8-9 years in the pro level, NFL, CFL, a lot of experience. Um, and I know Torrey Spears almost transferred out when Spavital was let go, and he specifically said McCoyle was why he stayed. So I get why they're putting him as that co-DC, but even though he doesn't have a ton of experience as a coach, you bring in somebody like Pavito who has a ton of experience and you make them co-DCs where you have a rising coach in McCoyle and you have a seasoned vet in Pavito, and Pavito can kind of help almost put McCoyle under his wing and just show him the ropes of what it's like to be the DC. Obviously, he knows the safety position. He played it at the professional level. He knows that one, but the ins and outs of being the DC is a different deal. And Pavito has a lot of experience there. Yeah, I have his coaching resume here. UTEP defensive coordinator the last 3 years for Bradley Dale Pavito. Before that, Texas A&M linebacker for 2 years, Ole Miss linebacker for a season, LSU linebackers and special teams coordinator for 3 seasons, Kentucky safeties and special teams coordinator for a season, Northwestern State head coach for 3 seasons, LSU linebackers and special teams coordinator again, 2005 to 2008, Middle Tennessee defensive coordinator, Houston co-defensive coordinator, Arkansas linebacker, special teams coordinator, Southern Miss linebacker, special teams coordinator. He's coached a lot of ball. And to team him up with McCoyle, who hasn't. He has a lot of football experience, but not a lot of experience coaching, let alone being a coordinator. To pair him up with somebody who does have that, I think is going to be huge. Obviously, it's a huge loss with Jonathan Packey going off to Duke, but to get an up and coming coach like McCoyle and to pair him with a seasoned veteran like Pavito, I really like that. I thought that was a sneaky good addition. And Chad Morris, a little bit polarizing because of the whole Arkansas thing. I mean, 181-40 as a high school coach, at least 2 state championships at Lake Travis. I don't know if he got some others, but I do know those ones. Those connections to the Texas high school community, that's going to be huge. It's going to be paramount. He's got a lot of those connections, got a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and you get him in there as a wide receiver coach and a pass game coordinator. I think both of those coaches are 2 really good hires. And when I look at this staff, it's full of young guys, and now you have some seasoned vets in there as well. I mean, they already have David Bailiff. He's a seasoned vet, of course. And I mean, even just the coaches that Kenny's able to bring in, obviously Barrick Neely goes and brings home Barrick Neely. We all loved that one. Lindsey Scott Jr. helping with the quarterbacks last year. I don't know if it's going to happen again this year. Now that he's doing his deal in the USFL, it's a pretty cool clip of him going around social media, doing an old school Tony Romo impression when Romo was first on Monday Night Football, predicting the play before it happened. But I'm really impressed with this coaching staff. And I think even with the losses of like Stutzman and Pat Key, I think they were able to get some really good value coming back in. But that's it. We're gonna wrap it up right there. So we're having battery issues with this camera. We've got to end this. This is gonna be a mess for Webb. But he'll have fun with it. He's the wizard for a reason. He's gonna be able to handle it. I believe in him very much. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/winnnoworgetbent. Check out our merch site, WNOGB.com. I've got the awesome Sicko shirt here. I'm wearing it right now. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, subscribe. Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Create an account for your friends, family members, whoever you want. Enemies, go ahead. Enemies, you know any UTSA people? Sign them up. Let's go. They're going to love getting those notifications. I know it. Check us out on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Win Now or Get Bent. On Instagram, at WNOGB. Again, like, subscribe, comment on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify. If you're an audio head like me, that's how I listen to podcasts. Go ahead, give us a good comment on there, subscribe, do all that good stuff, share that around. Thank you to TGC. Thank you to Chilsey. Thank you to the wizard, Zachary Webb, for producing this pod. I know this one's going to be pretty difficult for you. We had to shake off some of the dust on more than the mic over here on the technical side on my end. And thank you, of course, to you sickos for being patient. Well, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back. We're back, baby. We're going hard. We're going hard this summer. It's a lull. It's not going to be any sports going on. That's where we come in. That's where we come in with that sweet, sweet summer content. Can't wait to bring it to y'all. I can't wait to get back on this horse and ride it all the way into fall camp. Oh, yeah. All right. All right, sickos. Thank you for tuning in. This would be nothing without you. I'd be shouting into the void, staring off into nothing. And instead, it's falling amongst you, our familiar ears with my sickos. All right, everybody. Win now or get bent.